Jesus Christ, Joel. What do you do?
The hatred one person has to muster up in order to torture another human being has to come from a deep place. In Joel's case, it is not about the pain or agony of the tortured. The whole thing is about an intense fear of losing someone close to your heart. All others are just objects and obstacles. In a world where solitude and suffering is rooted into the state of living, such as in The Last of Us, the warmth of another human's presence softens our hardened exterior. There is such an interesting empty pain inside of us when we are alone and away from people who we could love, be it because of death or something else. We throw this fact around that we need people, that everyone needs somebody, and it seems banal, not lest we finally feel the feeling for ourselves. That feeling that nobody can quite pull us out of. It has such a scarring and devoid nature that it completely sucks our souls, if not for merely a moment, then for our whole lives. The death of Joe's own daughter was a moment that froze his heart. How could you care for something so dear to your heart to then lose it in the matter of minutes to the gun of a merciless soldier? From this point on, how could you forgive yourself? A father that couldn't protect his daughter. Do you turn to grief and sorrow then? Or do you turn to malice and aggression? Joe most probably had to build up a wall for his feelings to not pour out in a world that was increasingly endangered by undead people. It was a dam for the swelling tears of sadness that could overflood the calmness of a man that had to continue surviving somehow alongside his brother. We don't quite know what pushed Joe to continue with his life after the death of his daughter, Sarah, for 20 years straight. Remember that in the first game, Henry couldn't keep his composure when his little brother turned into a zombie and his emotions overflooded him as he shot himself in the head. I cannot say if it's right or wrong for people to commit suicide in such circumstances, because they cannot see past their sadness in that moment of tragedy. Henry was just a young adult, and he probably was trying to survive alongside his brother. Anything outside of that is not life. It is an empty existence. Yet who knows what could happen if one has the strength to live on. Joe got a second chance at a daughter, be it after 20 years. Henry might have gotten a shot at redemption to care for another boy, but he didn't live to experience that tale. But before we get further into the video, please consider subscribing for similar content such as this. Ellie to Joe was a lonesome kid that was sweet and charming and didn't have anyone else to rely on. This fact was even more intensified by the death of a close friend of Joe's, Tess, who wanted him to take her to that hospital.
I can't believe we did that.
Stop.
Joe and Ellie, to me, is an archetypal story of father and daughter that can never be replaced and is highly cherished by people. Do you know what happens when the silhouette of your dead child is filled up by someone similar? You get attached to that new apparition that acts as an image of relief and a second chance. Ellie wasn't Sarah, and Joe could distinguish that to a point. But after a while, the human mind mixes things up and makes due for that emotional weight that has been gathering up for a while. That's the reason why Joe is extremely protective of Ellie. He fears of losing her once again.
It's me. It's me. Look. It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
No.
And here's the point where Sarah is Ellie and they are both his daughters. People say fathers attach themselves strongly to their daughters. They can't shake that feeling of having to be their protectors in a world that could take advantage of them, especially considering the cruelty of the world of The Last of Us that Joe had been experiencing for quite a while. The death of another child under his care would mean destruction of another father, and that might as well delve such hollowness in Joe that it could literally kill him. While the response to Ellie being taken away by a group of people is the expression of fierce aggression. It is so potent that it burns those that are in the way of the father getting back to his daughter. We talked about the death on both sides. Well, have you seen how relentless humans are when it comes to trying to survive? For Joe, it meant everything to torture those two men, because harm to Ellie would mean the final and definite death of Joe's body and soul. It is brutal, and no one can justify the ruthlessness with which he interrogates them. That emotional dam overfloods with emotion, but this time it is transformed into wrath. Joe is quite firm with the interrogation and the beatings until he finally was forced to make use of a knife in a more vicious degree of questioning. He stabs it in the leg of the man that is tied up in a chair and threatens him that he will slice through his kneecap, thus rendering him heavily injured and unable to walk if he doesn't tell the truth. Once the man describes Ellie as some man's pet, it switches something on in Joe. He slices up his leg upwards and demands to know the exact location of where they took her, as he then puts the blooded knife in his mouth so that he can mark the spots on a map. Those men represent something that had taken away Sarah from him. They are figures of forcefulness, apathy and evil, the same as that soldier that carried on with the orders of his higher-ups that resulted in the death of something precious to Joel. That fact meant that he had to be brutal with these two, and yet fast and efficient enough in order to set off to save Ellie. Then he strangles the man in the chair and smashes the head of the other one with an iron pipe, which shows the evil that resides even in Joel.
I ain't telling you shit. That's all right. I believe it. No, wait!
Joel's actions are noble-minded when it comes to Ellie, but his methods are cruel. However, if Joel was such a piece of shit, we wouldn't get attached to him so much. This is because of the fact that we know that however shady Joel's dealings might be, he still nurtures love inside for those that are close to him. Yes, sure, that is not the kind of character that is heroic for the good of everyone, and we know it full well at the end of the first game. And yet we are not repelled by the man that tortured and killed some strangers without any hesitation. Is torture evil? Yes, but was it necessary? Perhaps. And that is the admirable trait of Joel. He does anything for his daughters, with whom he is most vulnerable and emotional. Joel is a monstrous human being in many aspects, but as a father, he is a hero. Those two sides of him are terrifyingly contrasting, which is why he lies to Ellie as to what happened at the hospital. He so strongly wishes to hide the murderous and of torture capable side of him from his new daughter, that he is even willing to swear a lie to her. That act alone says, "I'm horrified of losing you, hence why I will be the monster that protects you without you even quite knowing." Trust is broken in that way, because Ellie can't quite dig deeper into her adoptive father. And that's probably what tore her heart the most in the second game after he dies. The fact that she couldn't forgive him for lying to her and didn't have the chance to fully accept and embrace him. Her love is tragically reflected in the way how she turns into his monstrous form in the second game in a quest for revenge.
If I ever